January 8, 1943. Mercer's Pharmacy, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. 22-year-old pharmacist Lorraine Cassidy wipes down the prescription counter with rubbing alcohol and glances at the line forming outside the glass partition. Regular Thursday morning. Elderly women clutching ration books, a factory worker asking for aspirin, a young mother with a prescription for her child's cough syrup. Everything ordinary until a woman around 60 approaches the window, wearing a worn brown coat and a faded floral scarf. She slides 3 prescriptions across the counter. Lorraine unfolds them one by one. 3 different physicians. 3 different clinics across Pittsburgh. 3 medications that together form a deadly combination. Lorraine's eyes lift to meet the woman's. The older woman looks back calmly, almost pleasantly. "Everything on these, dear?" "Yes, sweetheart, all of it." Lorraine begins assembling the order, but her hands move mechanically while her mind kicks into high alert. She spent 4 years studying pharmaceutical sciences at the Pittsburgh College of Pharmacy. She knows these drugs are incompatible. Separately, they can treat conditions. Together, they become dangerous. "Excuse me, ma'am, who are these prescriptions for?" The woman doesn't blink. Quote 3. Quote 4. The woman offers a tired smile. Quote 5. Lorraine packages the medications carefully, her hands trembling slightly beneath the counter. She hands over the brown paper bag. The woman thanks her and leaves. Lorraine opens her thick ledger and records everything. Date, time, physical description, medication names. She doesn't know why. Just feels something gnawing at her. Something wrong. Very, very wrong. Lorraine Cassidy was born in Pittsburgh on January 12, 1921. Her father, Walter, worked as a machinist at the Westinghouse plant, her mother, Dorothy, as a seamstress in a downtown dress shop. Working-class family, God-fearing, strict. Lorraine was always a quiet girl with an excellent memory. Straight A's through high school, decided in her senior year to pursue pharmacy. Medical school was out of reach financially, but she won a partial scholarship to pharmacy college. Graduated in June 1942, just as the war was ramping up. For the past 7 months, she's been working at Mercer's Pharmacy on Liberty Avenue, one of 3 pharmacists behind the counter. She's unmarried. There were a few boys in college, but most enlisted after Pearl Harbor. She lives with her parents in a narrow row house in Lawrenceville, takes the streetcar to work every morning, reads detective novels in the evenings, doesn't smoke or drink. A quiet life. Almost boring. But that quiet life taught her to notice details. A pharmacist isn't just someone who counts pills and slaps labels on bottles. She's the last checkpoint between medicine and patient. Her professors drilled it into her skull. Check the prescriptions, verify compatibility, call the doctor if something doesn't add up. Lorraine always checks. Always. And now, locking up the pharmacy on the evening of January 8th, she can't shake the image of that woman in the brown coat. The next day, January 9th, the woman returns. Different prescriptions this time, drugs that could create dangerous interactions with the previous batch. Again, signatures from different doctors across the city. Lorraine fills the order silently, but records everything in her ledger. The address on the prescription, 428 Cypress Street, Apartment 2B. That evening, Lorraine takes a different streetcar route home, makes a deliberate detour. Number 428 Cypress is a narrow brick building, 3 stories, paint peeling around the windows. She stands across the street and stares up at the facade. Doesn't know what she's looking for. Some kind of sign? Evidence? Just to quiet her conscience? She stands there for 10 minutes, then heads home. Her mother asks over dinner, quote, 6, Lorraine answers, quote, 7. It's not a lie. She is tired. Tired of this gnawing feeling that she's watching something terrible unfold but can't understand what? That night, she lies awake, turning restlessly in bed. Remembers her toxicology lectures. Certain cardiac medications are essentially plant-based compounds in controlled doses. In the right amount, they stabilize heart rhythms. In elevated doses or dangerous combinations, they can cause serious harm. And if you add other drugs that intensify the effect, then even normal doses become risky. But doctors aren't idiots. They know pharmacology. Why would they prescribe such a combination? Unless they don't know about each other? 3 different physicians, 3 different clinics, and none of them checked what else the patient was taking? Lorraine sits up in bed, turns on her bedside lamp, opens her ledger, rereads her notes, and suddenly understands she needs to investigate, just to confirm everything's fine, that she's paranoid, not witnessing a crime. January 15th, 1943. Lorraine walks into the Allegheny Clinic on Penn Avenue, tells the receptionist she needs to consult about drug interactions for a patient. They send her to the head of internal medicine, Dr. Harriet Volker, a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and an exhausted face. Lorraine explains the situation, shows her copies of the prescriptions she transcribed into her ledger. Dr. Volker listens, frowns, then shakes her head. "Young lady, we don't make those kinds of prescriptions. It's impossible." "But there's your colleague's signature right here." Signatures can be forged, or a patient can manipulate separate doctors into writing isolated scripts without disclosing the full picture. Or a nurse might have signed off carelessly. But this combination? We'd never prescribe it knowingly to a living patient. And if someone did prescribe it? Doctor. Volker looks at Lorraine for a long moment. Then it's either catastrophic incompetence or deliberate malice. There's no third option. Lorraine leaves the office feeling like the ground has shifted beneath her feet. Deliberate malice. Those 2 words echo in her skull like church bells. She returns to the pharmacy, works her shift normally, fills prescriptions, counts change, smiles at customers. But inside, everything coils tight. She's a pharmacist. She dispensed those drugs. If someone dies, is she complicit? Or just doing her job? Where's the line? January 28th, 1943. 3 weeks have passed. Lorraine has almost convinced herself to forget the woman in the brown coat. Almost. Then she walks back into the pharmacy, this time buying sedatives and another bottle of cardiac medication. Prescription from a 4th doctor. Lorraine fills it. Her hands don't shake anymore. She's learned to control that. But after the woman leaves, Lorraine does something she's never done before. Steps out from behind the counter, grabs her coat, tells her colleague she needs 15 minutes, follows the woman outside. The woman walks slowly, unhurried, the gait of someone in her 60s, turns onto Cypress Street, enters number 428. Lorraine stands across the street, half hidden behind a parked delivery truck. Waits. 5 minutes later, a light flickers on in a second-floor window. Apartment 2B, the same address from the prescription. Lorraine stands there another 10 minutes, then turns and walks back to the pharmacy. Her heart hammers in her chest. She just tailed someone, like a private eye, like a lunatic. Why? What does this prove? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. The woman lives where she said she lives. What crime is that? Lorraine gets home. Her mother says she looks pale, asks if she's coming down with something. Lorraine says she's fine, goes to bed at 9, doesn't fall asleep until 3 in the morning, her mind spinning with a single question. What if there are others? Other patients with suspicious prescriptions? What if this isn't an isolated case? The next day, Lorraine starts a new list. She pulls the pharmacy's old dispensing logs from the past 6 months, July through December 1942. Sits in the back room after closing and flips through pages, looking for strange combinations, incompatible drugs, excessive dosages. She finds 4 cases from late 1942. First, a man who purchased medications that could trigger dangerous reactions when combined. Second, a woman with prescriptions for drugs that promote internal bleeding when taken together. Third, an elderly man buying medications with opposing mechanisms, creating a dangerous pharmaceutical cycle. Fourth, a middle-aged woman obtaining a combination that could cause respiratory problems. All four. Different people, different addresses, different prescribing doctors. Lorraine copies down the addresses. 1512 Baum Boulevard, 77 Smallman Street, 903 Negley Avenue, 615 Penn Avenue. All scattered across different Pittsburgh neighborhoods. No connection. Or is there? Lorraine closes her ledger, tucks it into her handbag, knows she's sliding into paranoia, but can't stop. Because if she's right, somewhere in Pittsburgh, people are dying. Dying from medications she dispensed with her own hands. February 3rd, 1943. Lorraine goes to the Carnegie Library on Forbes Avenue, asks the librarian for back issues of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette from the past 6 months. The librarian looks mildly surprised but complies. Lorraine sits at a wooden table in the reading room and starts flipping through pages, looking for obituaries. Finds dozens. It's a big city. People die every day. Old age, illness, accidents. But here's what's strange. Over the past 6 months, the obituaries mention 4 middle-aged men who died of acute cardiac failure. All 4 from neighborhoods where her suspicious patients live. Martin Howell, age 54, died September 12, 1942. Address, 1512 Baum Boulevard. Eugene Pritchard, age 51, died October 28, 1942. Address, 77 Smallman Street. Vernon Ackerman, age 49, died November 19, 1942. Address, 903 Negley Avenue. Chester Lang, age 52, died December 30, 1942. Address, 615 Penn Avenue. Lorraine cross-references the addresses with her list. Perfect matches. All 4. Her hands start trembling. She closes the newspaper, walks out of the library, moves down the sidewalk not seeing anything. 4 people dead. 4 addresses match. This isn't paranoia anymore. This is statistics. This is evidence. But evidence of what? That someone is causing death through prescription drugs? It sounds insane. Like Pulp Fiction. Like something out of her detective novels. But the numbers don't lie. The addresses don't lie. The dead don't lie. Lorraine goes home, sits at the kitchen table. Her mother asks if she's feeling all right. Lorraine says she needs to think. Her mother leaves her alone. Lorraine opens her ledger, stares at the lists. 4 dead men. 4 widows who bought suspicious combinations of medications. Same pattern. Different doctors. Different pharmacies? She doesn't know. She only has records from Mercer's. What if other pharmacies are involved? What if this is bigger than she thought? Lorraine makes a decision. She needs to talk to someone who can actually do something. Not a doctor, not a pharmacist, someone with authority. The police. February 5th, 1943. Lorraine walks into the Pittsburgh Police Department's East Liberty Station, asks to speak with a detective. They send her to Detective Andrew Finch, a man in his mid-40s with graying hair and tired eyes. Lorraine sits across from his desk and lays out everything. The suspicious prescriptions, the matching addresses, the obituaries. Finch listens without interrupting, takes notes on a yellow pad. When she finishes, he leans back in his chair. Miss Cassidy, let me ask you something. Do you have any proof these women actually gave those medications to their husbands? No, but do you have proof the medications caused the deaths? The combinations are dangerous. But do you have autopsy reports, toxicology, anything concrete? No. Finch sighs. Here's the problem. You've got circumstantial evidence. Suspicious, I'll grant you, but circumstantial. These men died of heart failure, common enough, especially in middle-aged men under wartime stress. The prescriptions could be coincidence. The widows could be innocent. 4 men. Detective. Same pattern, same time frame, same type of prescriptions. Finch taps his pen on the desk. I believe you're onto something. But believing isn't enough. I need evidence. Real evidence. Something that'll hold up in court. What kind of evidence? Witness testimony, proof of intent, documentation that shows these women deliberately harmed their husbands. Without that, we've got nothing. Lorraine feels frustration building. So you're saying I should just forget about it? No, I'm saying you need to keep watching. Keep records. If another case comes up, document everything. And if you can find a connection between these women, some link that ties them together, that would help enormously. Lorraine stands. I'll do that. Finch stands too. Miss Cassidy, be careful. If you're right about this, you're dealing with dangerous people. And dangerous people don't take kindly to being exposed. Lorraine returns to the pharmacy, keeps working her shifts, keeps filling prescriptions. But now she watches. Every customer who comes in with multiple prescriptions, she checks for compatibility. Every suspicious combination, she records in her ledger. By mid-February, she's added 2 more cases to her list. Both women. Both buying drugs that could cause harm when combined. Lorraine copies their addresses, starts watching the obituaries more carefully, waiting. On February 25, 1943, another obituary appears. Raymond Kowalski, age 53, died of cardiac failure. Address: 428 Cypress Street. The same address as the woman in the brown coat. Lorraine's hands shake as she reads the notice. This is it. Proof. The woman's husband is dead. Died exactly the way Lorraine predicted. She cuts out the obituary, tapes it into her ledger, takes everything to Detective Finch. Finch reads through her notes carefully. Looks up. Quote 29. Quote 30. Quote 31. Lorraine nods. Walks out of the police station feeling both relieved and frustrated. She's done everything right. Noticed the pattern. Documented the evidence. Reported to the authorities. But nothing's happening fast enough. More people could die while they investigate. March 1943. Lorraine continues her routine. Work, home, library. She spends her evenings reading through old newspapers looking for more patterns. Finds 3 more suspicious deaths from 1941. All men in their 50s, all died of heart failure, all had widows. Were those murders too? How far back does this go? The pattern becomes clearer the more she looks. Each death occurs within 3 to 6 weeks of the first prescription being filled. Each obituary mentions a sudden cardiac event. Each widow appears grief-stricken in public but remarries within a year or 2. Lorraine creates a timeline on butcher paper spread across her bedroom floor. Red marks for deaths, blue marks for prescription dates, green marks for doctor visits. The pattern is undeniable. Someone is orchestrating this. Someone with medical knowledge. Someone the women trust. Meanwhile, Detective Finch works his investigation from a different angle. He interviews the widows casually, just checking in after their losses, offering condolences, asking if they need anything. They all seem genuinely grief-stricken when he visits. Model citizens, churchgoers, active in their communities, no criminal records, no histories of violence, no obvious motive except perhaps unhappy marriages. But that's not evidence. During one visit to Mrs. Kowalski, Finch notices something. A photograph on the mantel shows her with a black eye, poorly covered with makeup. When he asks about it, she says she walked into a door. Classic excuse. He makes a note. When he visits Mrs. Howell, the widow from Baum Boulevard, her daughter mentions that she's, quote, 32, quote. The daughter doesn't seem to realize how that sounds. Finch asks why. The daughter shrugs. He drank, got mean. Mom was scared of him for years. Another note. Finch checks with the doctors who signed the prescriptions. He visits each one personally. Dr. Harold Mitchell at the Squirrel Hill Clinic doesn't remember the prescription at all. Quote, 34, quote, he says. Quote, 35, quote. When Finch shows him the prescription copy, Mitchell frowns. Quote, underscore 36, quote. Dr. Sarah Whitman at the Shadyside Medical Building is more forthcoming. Quote, underscore 37, quote, she says. Quote, underscore 38, quote. She points at the prescription. Quote, 39, quote. Finch asks if she reported it. She shakes her head. Quote, 40, quote. The pattern continues. Dr. Francis O'Connor at the Bloomfield Clinic. Could be my signature. Could be a forgery. Hard to say. Dr. Elizabeth Roth at the East Liberty Medical Center. I prescribed that drug, yes, but not in that amount. Someone changed the numbers. Finch compiles it all, brings it to his captain. We've got signature forgeries, prescription alterations, a clear pattern of fraudulent documents being used to obtain dangerous medications. The captain listens, nods. Still circumstantial. You need to prove intent. Prove these women knew what they were doing. Prove they deliberately caused harm. How do I do that without a confession? Find the person giving them instructions. Find the mastermind. Finch checks the death certificates at City Hall. Sits in a dusty records room flipping through files. Martin Howell. Cause of death, myocardial infarction. Signed by Dr. George Patterson, County Coroner. No autopsy. Eugene Pritchard. Cause of death, acute cardiac failure. Signed by Dr. Patterson. No autopsy. Vernon Ackerman. Same. Chester Lang. Same. Raymond Kowalski. Same. 5 deaths. Same coroner. Same conclusion. Same lack of investigation. Finch goes to see Dr. Patterson. The coroner is a heavy-set man in his 60s, tired and overworked. Detective, I sign 100 death certificates a month, he says. Middle-aged men dying of heart attacks? That's standard. Why would I order autopsies? Even when 5 of them die within a few months, all in similar circumstances? What circumstances? They're unrelated deaths, different families, different neighborhoods, different medical histories. What if they're not unrelated? Patterson looks skeptical. You're suggesting what, exactly? A conspiracy? I'm suggesting someone might be causing these deaths. Patterson sighs. Detective, unless you bring me proof, real, physical proof, I'm not exhuming bodies. The families have grieved. The men are buried. Let them rest. Finch returns to the station frustrated, calls Lorraine. We're stuck. No one will order autopsies. No one will take this seriously without concrete evidence. Lorraine asks, what about the prescriptions themselves? Can't we prove they're fraudulent? We can prove they're dangerous. We can prove some were altered. But we can't prove the women knew that. They can claim ignorance, say they trusted their doctors. So we're back to square one. Not quite. We know there's a pattern. We know someone is helping these women. We just need to find out who. That someone, Lorraine suspects, is Dr. Bernard Crane. But proving it is another matter entirely. Everything points to foul play, but nothing proves it beyond reasonable doubt. The investigation stalls. March turns into April. The trail grows colder. But Lorraine doesn't stop watching. April 1943. Lorraine notices a pattern she missed before. All the suspicious prescriptions were filled at different pharmacies across Pittsburgh. Mercer's Pharmacy, Greenfield Pharmacy, Lawrenceville Drug, Oakland Apothecary. The women are spreading their purchases across multiple locations. Smart. Harder to track. harder to notice. But Lorraine has contacts, fellow pharmacists she studied with. She starts making phone calls, casual conversations. "Hey, Dorothy, have you noticed any strange prescription combinations lately?" Some haven't. Some have, but didn't think much of it. One, a pharmacist named Helen Burke who works at Oakland Apothecary says, "Actually, yes. Last November, woman bought cardiac meds that seemed risky together. I remember because I almost called the doctor, but she seemed in a hurry, and I figured he knew what he was doing." Lorraine gets the details, matches them to her list. Another connection. She brings this to Finch. He nods grimly. "We're building a case, slowly. But we need something solid, a confession, a witness, something. What about exhuming the bodies? Toxicology tests? Expensive, and we'd need a court order. Judges don't grant those lightly, especially during wartime when resources are stretched. We need probable cause, strong probable cause." Lorraine feels the walls closing in. She's done everything she can think of, but it's not enough. The women are still free, still potentially active. May 1943. Lorraine gets an idea. What if these women know each other? What if they're coordinating? She starts following them, after her shifts when she can. The first few attempts are clumsy. She loses her target when Mrs. Kowalski takes an unexpected turn down an alley. She gets spotted when she follows Mrs. Howell too closely through Kaufman's department store. But she learns. Watches detective movies at the Liberty Theater, takes notes on surveillance techniques, buys a plain gray coat and a scarf to change her appearance. Starts carrying a newspaper to hide behind. The woman from Cypress Street, Mrs. Edith Kowalski, whose husband Raymond is now dead, has a predictable routine. Mondays, she volunteers at the church basement, sorting donated clothes for war refugees. Tuesdays, she shops at the strip district markets. Wednesdays, she visits her sister in Bloomfield. Thursdays, she goes to St. Patrick's Church for afternoon mass. Sundays, full morning service. Lorraine follows her to all these places over 2 weeks, watches from the back pew at church. After mass, Mrs. Kowalski talks with other parishioners. Friendly conversations, normal interactions, no suspicious contacts, no furtive meetings. Just a widow living her life. Lorraine switches to another target, the widow from Baum Boulevard, Mrs. Clara Howell. Different pattern. Mrs. Howell works part-time at a munitions factory in Lawrenceville, one of thousands of women who took factory jobs when the men went to war. She goes to a Red Cross volunteer meeting on Tuesday evenings at the YMCA on Wood Street. Lorraine shows up, pretending to be interested in volunteering. Signs up for the blood drive committee just to maintain her cover. Sits in the back during meetings. Watches Mrs. Howell interact with other volunteers. Nothing unusual, just a middle-aged woman trying to contribute to the war effort. Days pass. Lorraine's starting to feel ridiculous. She's tailing innocent-looking women like some kind of amateur private detective. Her mother notices her odd hours and asks questions. Quote, 65. Quote, 66. Quote, 67. Quote, 68. Her mother doesn't believe her but doesn't press. Her father, focused on his own long shifts at Westinghouse, barely notices. Lorraine begins to doubt herself. Maybe these women aren't connected. Maybe the deaths are coincidental. Maybe she's seeing patterns where none exist. Maybe Detective Finch is right to be cautious. But she can't let it go. Something in her gut says there's more to this. She just needs to be patient. Watch longer. Wait for the mistake. The mistake comes on May 18, 1943. It's a Tuesday evening. Lorraine is following Mrs. Kowalski from church. The widow takes her usual route down Liberty Avenue, but instead of turning toward home, she continues past her street, walks another 3 blocks, stops at a small diner called Murphy's, a cramped place with a lunch counter and 6 booths. Lorraine watches from across the street, hiding in the doorway of a closed shoe repair shop. Through the diner's large front window, she sees Mrs. Kowalski sit at a booth in the back. The widow orders coffee. Waits. 10 minutes later, another woman enters the diner. Lorraine recognizes her immediately. Mrs. Clara Howell, the widow from Baum Boulevard. She slides into the booth across from Mrs. Kowalski. They talk. Lorraine can't hear what they're saying, but the body language is telling. Familiar. Comfortable. These women know each other well. They're not chance acquaintances meeting by coincidence. They're friends. Or co-conspirators. Lorraine's heart pounds. She pulls out the small notepad she started carrying, writes down the time, location, both women's names, watches through the window. The women talk for 20 minutes. Mrs. Kowalski does most of the talking, animated, gesturing with her hands. Mrs. Howell listens, nodding occasionally. At one point, Mrs. Howell reaches across the table and squeezes Mrs. Kowalski's hand. Comfort? Support? Lorraine can't tell. Then they stand, leave money on the table, walk out together. Lorraine follows at a distance. The two women walk side by side down Liberty Avenue, talking quietly. After 2 blocks, they stop in front of a narrow brick building. A small brass plaque beside the door reads, quote, 69. They enter. Lorraine waits across the street, checks her watch. 6:15 in the evening. Most medical offices close by 5. Why are they here so late? 30 minutes pass. Lorraine shifts her weight from foot to foot, trying not to look conspicuous. A few pedestrians pass by. A streetcar rattles past. The sun sinks lower, casting long shadows across the street. Finally, at 6:50, the two women emerge. They stand on the sidewalk for a moment, talking. Then they part ways. Mrs. Kowalski heads east toward Cypress Street. Mrs. Howell heads west toward the streetcar stop. Lorraine doesn't follow either of them. Instead, she crosses the street and approaches the building. Looks at the directory beside the door. Second floor. Dr. Bernard Crane, General Practice. Office hours, Monday to Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. It's nearly 7 o'clock. The office should be closed. But the women were just there. Were they patients? Friends? Something else? Lorraine writes down the doctor's name and address in her notepad. Goes home. Sits at the kitchen table, her mind racing. 2 widows, both connected to suspicious deaths, both visiting the same doctor after hours. This can't be coincidence. The next morning, Lorraine goes to the Carnegie Library on her lunch break. Looks up Dr. Bernard Crane in the city directory. His office is listed at 847 Liberty Avenue. Been practicing in Pittsburgh for about 10 years, according to the directory. Nothing unusual in the listing. Just a general practitioner, one of hundreds in the city. But Lorraine's instincts tell her this is the connection she's been looking for. She goes to Detective Finch that afternoon. I think I found something important. Dr. Bernard Crane. Who's he? I saw 2 of the widows together. They went to his office. Finch writes down the name. I'll check him out. June 1943. Finch investigates Dr. Crane with methodical precision. On the surface, Bernard Crane is unremarkable. 54 years old, thin build, graying hair, wire-rimmed glasses. Graduated from Case Western Reserve Medical School in Cleveland in 1915. Served briefly in the Army Medical Corps during the Great War. Started private practice in Cleveland in 1920. Moved to Pittsburgh in 1932. Built a small but loyal patient base over the past 11 years. Mostly women, mostly working class, mostly Catholic. Finch digs deeper. Requests records from Cleveland PD. Takes 2 weeks to get a response. When the file arrives, it's thin but revealing. Dr. Bernard Crane was arrested on June 14, 1931, for performing an illegal abortion on a 19-year-old factory worker named Marie Kowalczyk. The girl hemorrhaged and nearly died. Her father reported Crane to the police. Crane was charged with felony medical malpractice and performing an illegal procedure. The case went to trial in September 1931, but the girl refused to testify, said she'd lied about Crane's involvement, said she'd tried to self-abort with a knitting needle. The jury acquitted Crane for lack of evidence, but the scandal destroyed his Cleveland practice. Patients left. Colleagues shunned him. He closed his office in January 1932 and moved to Pittsburgh 2 months later. Finch brings this information to his captain. Crane has a history of illegal medical practice. He's willing to break the law to help women in difficult situations. The captain is unimpressed. That was over a decade ago. He was acquitted. You can't arrest a man for something he didn't do 12 years ago. But it shows a pattern. He helps women who have no other options. Helping isn't the same as killing. You still don't have proof he's involved in these deaths. Finch knows the captain is right, but his gut tells him Crane is the key. He decides to interview Crane's current patients. Spends a week sitting outside Crane's office watching women come and go. Approaches them on the street after their appointments. Shows his badge. Asks if they'd be willing to answer a few questions. Most refuse. Quote, 78. Quote, 79. One woman spits at his feet and walks away. But a few agree. Mrs. Dorothy Simmons, age 42, machinist's wife, 3 children. Dr. Crane is a good man, she says. He listens, doesn't judge. Most doctors treat women like we're hysterical children. Dr. Crane treats us like human beings. Finch asks what brings her to see him. Headaches, nerves, you know, life. Does she know any other patients of Dr. Crane's? Quote, 83, Anyone whose husband recently died? Mrs. Simmons's expression shifts, guarded. Why are you asking that? Just routine questions, Finch says. Mrs. Simmons shakes her head. I don't know anything about that. Walks away quickly. Mrs. Helen Kowalski, age 38, no relation to Edith Kowalski, widow of a steelworker who died in a factory accident. Dr. Crane helped me when my husband passed, she says. Gave me something for the grief, for the sleepless nights. I don't know what I would have done without him. Did he ever suggest anything else? Anything unusual? Like what? Like ways to cope with a difficult marriage. Mrs. Kowalski's face hardens. Quote, 89, Finch apologizes. Wrong person. Wrong death. He moves on. Mrs. Agnes Brennan's neighbor, Mrs. Ruth Patterson, is more forthcoming. I knew Agnes before Gerald died, she says. That man was a brute. Came home drunk every Friday. Beat her black and blue. She called the police twice. They did nothing. Told her to be a better wife. She went to Father Murphy at St. Patrick's. He told her marriage is sacred. She made her vows before God. She was trapped. Did she know Dr. Crane? I think so. Agnes mentioned him once. Said he understood her. Said he actually listened. Did Agnes ever talk about wanting her husband dead? Mrs. Patterson hesitates. Not in those words. But once, after a particularly bad beating, she said she wished Gerald would just drop dead. But lots of wives say that. Doesn't mean anything. Finch makes notes. It's all circumstantial, hearsay, nothing that would hold up in court. But the pattern is becoming clearer. He interviews Dr. Crane's nurse, a prim woman in her 50s named Miss Gertrude Wells. She's worked for Crane since 1935. Quote, 94, quote, she says stiffly. Quote, 95, quote. Does he ever see patients after hours? Quote, 96, quote. What kind of emergencies? Quote, 97, quote. Has she ever noticed anything unusual, suspicious? Quote, 98, quote. Finch doesn't believe her, but he can't prove she's lying. He brings all of this to Lorraine over coffee at a diner on Penn Avenue. Crane is connected to at least 2 of the widows. He has a history of illegal practice. He's known for helping women in desperate situations, but I can't prove he's involved in murder. Lorraine stirs her coffee. What if I go to him? Pretend I need help with a difficult husband? Finch looks alarmed. Absolutely not. Too dangerous. But it might be the only way to get proof. Miss Cassidy, you're a civilian. You're not trained for this kind of work. If Crane suspects you're setting him up, you could get hurt. Or worse. Then what do we do? Finch thinks for a long moment, stares into his coffee cup. I'll confront him, put pressure on him, see if he cracks. June 22nd, 1943. Finch goes to Dr. Crane's office at 847 Liberty Avenue. The building is old, pre-war construction, narrow and poorly lit. He climbs the stairs to the second floor. The hallway smells of disinfectant and old wood. A frosted glass door reads, __quote _ 106 _ Finch. Opens it. Inside, a small waiting room. 3 chairs, a magazine table, a receptionist's desk. Miss Wells sits behind it, typing on an old Underwood. She looks up. Can I help you? Finch shows his badge. Detective Andrew Finch, Pittsburgh Police. I need to speak with Dr. Crane. Miss Wells's expression doesn't change. Do you have an appointment? No, but I think he'll want to see me. She picks up the telephone, dials an internal extension. Doctor, there's a police detective here to see you. Pause. He says it's important. Pause. Yes, sir. She hangs up. Dr. Crane will see you in a moment. Finch waits. 5 minutes pass. Finally, an inner door opens. Dr. Crane emerges. Tall, thin, sharp features, wire-rimmed glasses. White coat over a gray suit. He extends a hand. Detective Finch, I'm Dr. Crane. Please, come into my office. They shake. Crane's grip is firm but not aggressive. Professional. He leads Finch into a cramped office. Medical charts stacked on the desk, anatomy posters on the walls, a bookshelf packed with medical texts. 2 chairs facing each other across a small desk. Crane sits behind the desk, gestures for Finch to sit across from him. __quote _ 116 _ Crane's voice is calm, measured. No nervousness. Finch decides to be direct. I'm investigating a series of suspicious deaths. Middle-aged men. All died of cardiac failure over the past year. All their widows were patients of yours. Crane nods slowly. I have many patients, Detective. Many of them are widows. That's not unusual. These widows all obtain prescriptions for dangerous drug combinations. Drugs that, when taken together, can cause fatal heart attacks. Crane's expression doesn't change. Are you accusing me of prescribing those medications? Did you? I have to check my records. I see 30 to 40 patients a week. I can't remember every prescription I write. Crane opens a filing cabinet, pulls out several patient folders, flips through them methodically. Here's Mrs. Edith Kowalski. I've been treating her for anxiety and depression since her husband's death. I prescribed her mild sedatives, nothing dangerous. He shows Finch the chart. Finch examines it. The prescriptions listed are standard, low-dose barbiturates, nothing that would cause a heart attack. What about before her husband died? Before? Crane flips back through the chart. I saw her a few times, treated her for bruising, contusions. She said she was clumsy, fell downstairs, walked into doors. He looks at Finch. Classic signs of domestic abuse. I documented it in case she ever needed evidence for legal proceedings. Did you suggest she leave her husband? I suggested she consider her safety. I gave her information about women's shelters, about legal aid societies. Did you suggest any other options? Crane's eyes narrow slightly. Quote, 131, quote, 132, quote. Crane leans back in his chair. Quote, 134. Crane stands. Finch stands too, looks Crane directly in the eyes. Crane's face remains impassive. That's quite a theory, detective, but theories aren't evidence. If you had evidence, you'd arrest me. Since you're not arresting me, I assume you have nothing. He walks to the door, opens it. Good day, detective. Finch walks through, turns back. I'll be watching you, Dr. Crane. Every patient, every prescription, every move. Crane smiles thinly. Feel free. I have nothing to hide. Finch leaves the building. His hands are shaking with frustration. Crane is too calm, too prepared. He's been through this before. In Cleveland. He knows how to handle police inquiries, knows how to cover his tracks. Finch goes back to the station, writes up his notes. But he knows it's not enough. He needs hard evidence, a confession, a witness, something concrete. The next day, Finch receives a phone call. It's the pharmacist Helen Burke from Oakland Apothecary. Quote, 142, quote, 143, quote, 144, quote, 145, quote, 146. Finch writes it down. 40 Finch drives to Oakland Apothecary. Helen Burke is waiting for him. She hands him photocopies of the prescriptions. 3 different doctors. 3 medications that, together, create a dangerous cardiac risk. Finch thanks her, takes the copies, adds Mrs. Lillian Mercer to his list. That night, he drives past her house on Negley Avenue. Lights are on. A figure moves behind the curtains. He sits in his car and watches. Feels like a stalker. But this is police work. Sometimes it's unglamorous. Sometimes it's just sitting in the dark, watching windows, waiting for something to happen. July 1943. Nothing happens. No new suspicious prescriptions at Mercer's. No new deaths in the obituaries. The widows go about their lives quietly. Crane continues his practice. Finch watches them all but has no grounds for arrest. Lorraine keeps working at the pharmacy, keeps checking prescriptions, keeps recording anything unusual. But the trail has gone cold. Weeks pass. Lorraine starts to wonder if Finch's visit scared Crane off. Maybe he stopped whatever he was doing. Maybe it's over. Then, on July 29, 1943, a new customer comes into Mercer's pharmacy. A woman in her 40s, nervous, clutching 3 prescriptions. Different doctors, risky drug combinations, the same pattern. Lorraine's heart sinks. It's not over. It's still happening. Lorraine fills the prescriptions. Her hands steady now, she's done this enough times. But inside, she's screaming. How many more? How long will this go on? After the woman leaves, Lorraine calls Finch. It's happening again. Finch curses. Address? Lorraine gives it. 1822 Ellsworth Avenue. I'll check it out. 3 weeks later, on August 22nd, an obituary appears. Gerald Brennan, age 57, died of heart failure. Address: 1822 Ellsworth Avenue. Lorraine cuts it out, adds it to her ledger, brings it to Finch. Finch stares at the clipping. This has to stop. Now. How? I don't know yet, but I'm not giving up. September 1943. Finch decides to take a different approach. Instead of confronting Crane, he starts investigating Crane's past more thoroughly. Travels to Cleveland, where Crane practiced before coming to Pittsburgh. Talks to former colleagues, former patients. Discovers that Crane had a reputation for helping women in abusive marriages. Some called him a saint. Others called him dangerous. One retired nurse, a woman named Margaret Flynn, tells Finch something chilling. Quote, 161. Quote, 162. Quote, 163. Quote, 164. Quote, 165. Quote, 166. Quote, 167. Finch returns to Pittsburgh with this information, brings it to his superiors. They're skeptical. This is all hearsay, ancient history. You need concrete evidence. I have a pattern, multiple deaths, multiple connections to Crane. Patterns aren't proof. Bring me something solid. Finch is frustrated but doesn't give up. He brings what he's learned to Lorraine. Crane's been doing this for years, maybe over a decade. He's smart, careful. He doesn't leave obvious trails. There has to be a way to catch him. There is, but it's risky. What is it? We need one of the women to confess. October 1943. Finch identifies the most recent widow, Mrs. Agnes Brennan, whose husband Gerald died in August. He's been watching her for 2 weeks, documented her movements, her shopping trips, her visits to church, and most importantly, her visits to Dr. Crane's office 3 times in September alone. Always after hours, always through the back entrance on the alley. Finch decides it's time to apply direct pressure. On October 14th, he shows up at her door unannounced. It's a Thursday afternoon. Mrs. Brennan answers wearing an apron, flour on her hands. Can I help you? Mrs. Brennan, I'm Detective Andrew Finch, Pittsburgh Police. I need to talk to you about your husband's death. Her face goes pale. My husband died of a heart attack. There's nothing to talk about. May I come in? She hesitates, then steps aside. I suppose. Finch enters a small, tidy home. Modest furniture, lace curtains, a photograph of Gerald Brennan in uniform from the First World War on the mantel. Mrs. Brennan leads him to the living room. They sit. Finch pulls out his notebook. Mrs. Brennan, I know what happened to your husband. I know you caused his death. She goes rigid. That's a terrible thing to say. Is it untrue? Of course it's untrue. Gerald had a weak heart. The doctor said... Which doctor? Dr. Crane? Her mouth opens, closes. Dr. Crane is my physician. There's nothing wrong with that. He's also the physician of 4 other widows whose husbands died under similar circumstances. All heart attacks. All within weeks of obtaining dangerous prescription combinations. Mrs. Brennan's hands shake. Quote, Finch leans forward. She starts crying. 102, Finch softens his tone. She nods through tears. She sobs harder. Finch takes out his notepad. Mrs. Brennan looks terrified. Mrs. Brennan wipes her eyes, takes a shaky breath. Finch feels ice in his veins. A dozen or more. This is bigger than he thought. She nods. She 30. Mrs. Brennan takes the pen. Her hand trembles as she writes. 2 hours later, Finch has a signed, detailed confession. 8 pages, names, dates, specific instructions from Dr. Crane, the medications used, the dosages, the timeline, everything he needs. October 28, 1943. Finch presents the confession to the district attorney. D.A. Thomas Hartley reads through it carefully, looks up. Quote, 204, quote, quote, 205, quote, quote, 206, quote. Finch works fast. Over the next week, he interviews Mrs. Edith Kowalski and Mrs. Clara Howell. Both crack under pressure. Both admit what they did. Both implicate Dr. Crane. By November 5th, Finch has 3 signed confessions, all consistent, all naming Dr. Crane as the architect. D.A. Hartley issues an arrest warrant. On November 8, 1943, Finch and 4 uniformed officers go to Dr. Crane's office. They enter during office hours. Miss Wells tries to protest. "You can't just barge in here." Finch shows the warrant. "Yes, we can." They find Crane in his office with a patient, a pregnant woman in her 20s. Finch apologizes to her, asks her to leave. She does, frightened. Then Finch turns to Crane. "Dr. Bernard Crane, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder." Crane doesn't resist, doesn't protest, just stands, removes his white coat, extends his wrists for the handcuffs. "I assume you have evidence this time." 3 confessions, detailed testimony, prescription records. "You're done, doctor." Crane is taken to Allegheny County Jail, arraigned the next day, pleads not guilty, hires Samuel Goldman, one of Pittsburgh's most expensive criminal defense attorneys. Goldman immediately attacks the confessions. __quote _212 October 28, 1943. Finch arrests Dr. Bernard Crane, charges him with conspiracy to commit murder. Crane denies everything. Hires Samuel Goldman, one of Pittsburgh's most expensive criminal defense attorneys. Goldman immediately files motions to suppress the confessions. Coerced testimony. Obtained under duress. Unreliable. But Judge Walter Brennan, no relation to Mrs. Agnes Brennan, denies the motions. The trial is set for February 1944. The prosecution has more than just confessions. Over November and December, Finch builds the case brick by brick. He exhumes the body of Gerald Brennan. The autopsy reveals elevated levels of digitalis and other cardiac glycosides in the tissue samples. Not conclusive proof of murder. Gerald had heart problems, but consistent with overdose. He interviews pharmacists across Pittsburgh. 8 of them remember filling suspicious prescriptions. 3 kept copies, which they provide to Finch. He interviews doctors whose signatures appeared on the prescriptions. 4 identify them as forgeries. 2 admit they may have signed blank prescription forms that Crane or the women could have filled in later. Sloppy practice, but it happens. By January 1944, the prosecution has a mountain of evidence. 3 confessed co-conspirators, exhumation results, prescription records, testimony from pharmacists, expert witnesses on drug interactions, a timeline showing pattern and intent. D.A. Hartley is confident. "We're going to bury him." But Goldman is a skilled attorney. He attacks every piece of evidence. The confessions? Women desperate to avoid prison will say anything. The exhumation? Inconclusive. The man had heart disease. Of course there's digitalis in his system. He was prescribed it for his condition. The prescriptions? Circumstantial. No proof Dr. Crane wrote them or knew how they'd be used. The pattern? Coincidence. Dr. Crane treats many patients. Some have difficult marriages. Some husbands die. That's not murder. The trial begins on February 7, 1944. Allegheny County Courthouse. Courtroom packed with spectators, reporters, curious citizens. The case has become a sensation. Newspapers run headlines. Doctor of Death. Mercy killer or cold-blooded murderer. Wives who killed on prescription. The prosecution calls witnesses methodically. First, Detective Finch. He testifies about his investigation, the suspicious deaths, the pattern, the connection to Dr. Crane. Under cross-examination, Goldman hammers him. Detective, do you have any physical evidence? A letter, a recording, a witness, showing Dr. Crane explicitly told these women to kill their husbands? Not in those exact words, but... Yes or no, detective? No. Then you're asking this jury to convict based on inference and speculation. Next, the prosecution calls Lorraine Cassidy. She takes the stand, nervous but determined. Describes how she first noticed the suspicious prescriptions, her ledger, her investigation, her documentation. Under cross-examination, Goldman is dismissive. Miss Cassidy, you're a pharmacist, not a detective. Isn't it possible you misunderstood what you saw? That you let your imagination run wild? No, sir. The drug combinations were dangerous, potentially fatal. Potentially, but not definitely. People take dangerous medications all the time and survive. Not in these combinations, not at these dosages. But you're not a doctor. You don't make those determinations. I'm a licensed pharmacist. I'm trained to recognize dangerous interactions. And yet you filled those prescriptions. If you truly believed they were deadly, why did you dispense them? Lorraine hesitates. Because I didn't have proof. I couldn't refuse without evidence. So you gave out medications you believed could kill people. I documented everything and reported it to the authorities. After the men were already dead. Lorraine's face flushes. Goldman sits down. The prosecution calls Mrs. Agnes Brennan. She takes the stand trembling, testifies about Gerald's abuse, the beatings, the threats, her desperation, how Dr. Crane offered her a way out, how he gave her specific instructions, told her which medications to obtain, how to administer them, how long it would take. The courtroom is silent as she speaks. Some jurors look sympathetic. Others look skeptical. Goldman's cross-examination is brutal. Quote, 238, quote, 239, quote, 240, quote, 241, quote, 242, quote, 243, quote, 244, quote, 245, quote, 246, quote, 247, quote, 248, quote, 249, quote, 250, quote, 251, quote, 252, quote, 253, quote, 254, quote, 255. Goldman turns to the jury. The prosecution objects. Judge Brennan sustains, but the damage is done. The prosecution calls expert witnesses. Dr. Harriet Volker testifies about the danger of the drug combinations. Quote, 257, quote, under cross-examination, Goldman asks, quote, 258, quote, 259, quote, 260, quote, 261, quote, 262, quote, 263, quote, 264, quote, 265, quote, 266. The defense calls its own witnesses. Dr. Crane takes the stand in his own defense. Calm, articulate, confident. He testifies that he treated these women for legitimate conditions: depression, anxiety, trauma from domestic abuse. Underscore, quote, 267, underscore. The prosecution's cross-examination is aggressive. Dr. Crane, isn't it true you were arrested in Cleveland for performing an illegal abortion? I was arrested. I was acquitted. But the accusation damaged your reputation. Yes. Forced you to leave Cleveland. I chose to leave. And start over in Pittsburgh, where no one knew about your past. I started over, yes. Is that a crime? It shows a pattern of illegal medical practice. Objection, Goldman shouts. Sustained, says Judge Brennan. The prosecutor switches tactics. Dr. Crane, how many of your patients are widows? I don't keep statistics. Estimate. Perhaps 30%. And how many of those husbands died of heart attacks? I wouldn't know. Isn't it unusual for so many of your patients to be widows? I treat many women in difficult situations. Unfortunately, some of those situations involve abusive husbands, and stressed, abusive men often die young. How convenient for your patients. Objection. Sustained. The trial lasts 2 weeks. Both sides present compelling arguments. The prosecution paints Crane as a serial killer hiding behind a medical license. The defense paints him as a compassionate doctor being scapegoated by desperate women. The jury deliberates for 3 days. On February 24, 1944, they return a verdict. Guilty on 5 counts of conspiracy to commit murder. The courtroom erupts. Crane's face doesn't change. Goldman immediately files an appeal. Judge Brennan sets sentencing for March 1st. When that day comes, Crane stands before the judge. "Do you have anything to say before I pass sentence?" Crane speaks for the first time with emotion in his voice. "I dedicated my life to helping women who had no other help. I won't apologize for that." Judge Brennan is unmoved. "You're not being punished for helping women, Dr. Crane. You're being punished for helping them commit murder. 25 years in state prison." The widows who confessed receive lighter sentences, 5 to 8 years with credit for cooperation. The others, who never confessed, are never charged. Insufficient evidence. Lorraine follows the trial closely. When the verdict is announced, she feels a weight lift. It's over. She stopped them, saved lives, proved that one person paying attention can make a difference. But it's not entirely over, because on March 5, 1944, Lorraine receives a letter. No return address. Inside, a single sheet of paper with a typewritten message. "You ruined everything. You condemned us to suffer. We won't forget." Lorraine shows the letter to Finch. He shrugs. Empty threats. Ignore it. Lorraine tries, but she can't shake the feeling that she's made enemies. Dangerous enemies. Women who lost their only way out. Women who blame her for their imprisonment. Weeks pass. Nothing happens. Lorraine starts to relax, returns to her normal routine. Work, home, life goes on. The war continues. Her father works longer hours at the plant, making parts for bombers. Her mother volunteers with the Red Cross. Lorraine buys war bonds, saves ration coupons, listens to Edward R. Murrow on the radio. The trial fades into memory. Life in Pittsburgh returns to normal. But Lorraine never forgets. She keeps her ledger, keeps watching prescriptions, keeps checking for patterns. In August 1945, the war ends. Men come home. The city celebrates. Lorraine's life continues quietly. She never marries, never has children, works at Mercer's Pharmacy until 1968, when she retires at 47. Lives alone in the Lawrenceville row house after her parents pass away, her father in 1959, her mother in 1963. She reads books, watches television, keeps to herself. Occasionally, Detective Finch, retired now, living in the suburbs, calls to check in. They meet for coffee once a year, talk about the case, about Crane, about the women. "You saved lives," Finch always says. "You did something extraordinary." Lorraine doesn't feel extraordinary. She feels like she did what anyone should do. Notice. Speak up. Don't look away. That's all. Years pass. Dr. Crane dies in prison in 1967, 23 years into his sentence. Heart attack, ironically. The widows who were convicted are released in the mid-1950s, some on parole, some after serving full sentences. Lorraine sees one of them once, in 1965, at a grocery store. The woman, Mrs. Kowalski, whose husband was one of the first victims, looks at Lorraine across the produce aisle. Their eyes meet. Neither speaks. Mrs. Kowalski turns and walks away. Lorraine understands. To that woman, she's not a hero. She's the person who destroyed her life, sent her to prison, made her suffer. The woman will hate her forever. Lorraine accepts this. She made a choice, stood for what was right, saved innocent people from being harmed. That's what matters. In 1975, at age 54, Lorraine is diagnosed with breast cancer. She undergoes surgery, then radiation treatment at Allegheny General Hospital. The prognosis is uncertain. She might have 5 years. She might have 10. She accepts it calmly. Death doesn't scare her. She's seen enough of it, stopped enough of it, to respect it without fearing it. Her friends from the pharmacy visit, bring flowers, casseroles, magazines. Finch comes too, now in his late 70s, frail but still sharp. They sit in her living room and reminisce. "Do you regret it?" he asks. "Starting all this?" Lorraine thinks, "No, not for a second." "Even knowing what it cost you?" "What did it cost me?" Finch gestures around the room. A normal life, a family, peace. Lorraine shakes her head. "I had a life. I had purpose. I did something that mattered. That's more than most people can say." Finch nods. "You're right. You changed things, stopped evil. That's what counts." They sit in silence for a while. Then Finch says, "I never told you this, but after the trial, I got a letter. Anonymous. It said, 'Thank you for stopping Dr. Crane. He helped kill my father in Cleveland in 1929. I always knew it wasn't natural, but no one believed me. Now I have closure.' That letter made me realize we probably only caught a fraction of what he did. He might have been involved in dozens of deaths over the years." Lorraine absorbs this. "Then we did the right thing." "Absolutely." Lorraine survives another 12 years. The cancer goes into remission. She lives quietly, peacefully, dies in her sleep in 1987 at age 66. A small funeral, a handful of old friends, a quiet burial in Allegheny Cemetery. No headlines, no tributes, no historical markers. The story of Lorraine Cassidy, the pharmacist who stopped a serial killer, fades into Pittsburgh's forgotten history. But not entirely forgotten. Because Detective Finch, before he dies in 1983 at age 84, writes a memoir. A small press book titled __quote_308__. It sells modestly, a few hundred copies, but it ensures that Lorraine's story survives, that her courage is remembered, that her example endures. The lesson is simple. One person can make a difference. One person paying attention, asking questions, refusing to look away, can change everything. Lorraine Cassidy proved it. On January 8, 1943, when she wrote down a suspicious prescription in her ledger, she set in motion a chain of events that saved lives, brought a killer to justice, and demonstrated that ordinary people are capable of extraordinary things. All it takes is courage. All it takes is conscience. All it takes is the decision not to be silent. Lorraine made that decision, and the world is better for it.